Welcome to How We Work Now, where we explore how people are reshaping the modern workplace through lived experience, neurodiversity, chronic illness, and disability. Today I'm joined by Martin MacArthur, head of Outbound Sales at Global Sales Mentor. Martin has over 14 years of experience in outbound sales, sales development, and pipeline growth across tech, digital marketing, and managed services. Martin is also completely blind due to retinitis pigmentosa. Uses assistive technology like Apple VoiceOver to do his work and is fluent in Braille. Alongside his career in sales, he has navigated severe kidney disease, years of home dialysis, and a kidney transplant in 2024. I'm so glad to have you here with us today, Arthur. Is there anything else you'd like to add about yourself or your work for our audiences today?
No, that was a great intro, Anita. I'll just help you. It's retinitis pigmentosa, or
Thank you.
RP for short. Yeah, it's a tongue twister, so I thought I would just clarify for you. But no, that was an awesome intro. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So let's get right into it. Can you tell us a bit about your background and how you first found your way into outbound sales?
Yeah, so I got introduced to outbound sales back in 2009, 2010, around that mark. Just I happened to join a startup voice over IP company locally here in Ottawa, and it was a couple guys just started this business, and they were looking for people to come in and call and set meetings for them. But there was zero process, zero structure. Had to figure everything out on the fly and create my own messaging. Didn't that was kind of just at the point where Google was starting to become popular. So I had to do a lot of researching on who to find, how to find phone numbers, names, etc. So I did that for about a year, I think it was. Um, and then I joined a managed IT service provider where I started to get some formal training, product training. As the MSP space is very technical, you're talking to a lot of IT folks, senior IT folks, so you need to really understand the product that you're pitching to them. So did a lot of training there, and that's where I really started to blossom and get into a rhythm of understanding and knowing what outbound is. And after that journey there for about 5 years, I got into the outbound sales agency space. Just as LinkedIn evolved, started to build an audience and brand on LinkedIn, and I got introduced to Ryan Reiser, who a lot of people in the outbound world knows, and just really started to learn and grow under his guidance and teachings, and it just evolved there. And where I am now today, the global sales mentor, I'm helping manufacturers that are looking to expand internationally and helping them set up their distributor network. So it's kind of evolved from that with a lot of stops in between.
Yeah. So, kind of navigating all of these early career transitions and moving through things, how did you navigate traditional work systems that aren't necessarily always built for people with disabilities in mind?
Yeah, that's a great question. So early in when I was younger, so like in middle school, early high school, and in college, as technology started to really evolve, one of the tools that really helps me out my day to day is a screen reader. And early on, it was a secondary program. You had to spend a lot of money to purchase it. And it was very clunky, but it kind of, did the job okay. And I kind of figured it out with some teaching, etc. And then as Windows started to kind of really get into the .com era, etc., there was a program that was designed specifically for Windows, and um, so I got to know that and understand it. And then as Mac and Apple and iOS came out, in the, I guess it would have been the 2010 era, somewhere around there. They were really progressive and built accessibility right into their operating system. So I didn't have to go and purchase any additional third-party tools, spend a lot of money. But to answer your question, it is very difficult because, uh, like even today, a lot of the go-to-market sales tools, outbound sales tools, etc. Nothing is really made for for those who have a blindness or visual disability. They're made, they're built and manufactured for mass use, which is totally understandable because, how many people are in sales and or in outbound sales that are totally blind, right? So,
Mhm.
um, I've had to just do a lot of self-learning, a lot of testing and figuring it out, getting frustrated along the way and wanting to throw stuff, but just over the time just made, created different workarounds that fit me and suit me and haven't always made for I guess, the most productive work environment, but it works for me, I guess, is at the end of the day, it's all that matters.
Mhm. So, have you faced issues with like cultural assumptions and kind of the interpersonal really aspects of the workplace and sales in addition to just the physical technologies and assistants you use?
Yeah, definitely. So I can't say for certain, but just a feel, gut feeling that I have is from 2015 or 2016 to 2017. I really struggled to find employment because I was let go from the managed service provider I was working with, and it's having a hard time finding employment. And a lot of people, I'd reach out to hiring managers, VP of sales, founders, the type of people that I wanted to work with. And I was doing the work to, what I like to say, do the work to get the work, or, do the job to get the job that you want, right? So I would
Mhm.
be outbounding, calling them, sending them an invite on LinkedIn. I would send them an email, and it'd always come back to, well, yeah, you're a strong candidate, applicant. We like this, we like that, but then, end of the day, it never materialized. So I do feel that, you know, at the back of the mind of the people when I would say, hey, I'm totally blind. I need these accommodations made. I need to be able to before signing an offer, I need to be able to ensure that your applications are going to work with my screen reader. Otherwise, it's not going to work, right? And
Mhm.
so I do feel like there was a lot of people, who obviously they're not going to come out and say it, right? Because that just
Mhm.
isn't how things work. So I do feel like that is the case, but I can't prove that. But and then on the other hand, where I have been a part of teams, like I mentioned earlier, with my screen reader, I do need some accommodations and workarounds, etc. And um, you know, with outbound sales, a lot of it's about volume, high volume, and that just isn't always something that works well for me. So, it always ended up to a challenging conversation because, in order to get that leader to wrap their head around it and understand, that basically they'd just be like, well, why can't you just get it to work this way, or can't you do it
Mhm.
faster that way, right? And it's just very difficult for them to understand it.
Right. And yeah, it kind of leads into my next question, which is about how do you manage pacing and recovery in a role that can be so geared towards, go, 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 constant output, and really overextending yourself culturally.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I find like leaning on others that are in the space, because whether you have a disability or not, you're still, everyone is still kind of experiencing similar overall situations, right? Like experiencing the prospects who are not willing to be receptive to your outreach or getting objections, getting hung up on, whatever the case might be. So just being a part of communities that helps, and then also, um, I like to go and work out, and I just find that really I walk a lot on the treadmill, and I find that's a big help for just clearing the mind and refocusing.
Yeah, exercise can be really good for not traditional type of rest, but still kind of a reset and
Yeah, yeah.
care
You
for the
get
body.
because you get the blood moving, right? And
Yeah.
when the blood gets moving, then everything else it just kind of it's like momentum. It just starts to
Mhm.
build and build and build.
Yeah, I know whenever I don't work out very much, I feel sluggish and I don't want to work out. But when I start working out again, I'm like, why did I stop?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
So, are there any tools or systems that a lot of sighted sales professionals overlook in their day-to-day life because they don't think about, what it means to be disabled or have visual differences, being blind?
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of the in outbound sales, for anyone that's familiar with that world or sales in general, when you're prospecting, the big thing is using some sort of a dialer, whether it's parallel or power dialer, which isn't really compatible to a screen reader because when you're um, making those calls, it's a software, right, that you're in. So when you hit go, it's the if somebody's not answering it, it bounces to the next call. And for a screen reader, for someone that's sighted, moving the mouse around, they see, I imagine they see everything kind of in right in front of them, and where their mouse is, that's where they are. Well, with a screen reader, that's not always the case because you're
Mm.
navigating everything using the keyboard, so tab, arrows, etc. So you might say, okay, well, I'm reading this section of the screen because that's what my screen readers tell me. Whereas, somebody, if they're doing a screen share or demo with me, might be like, well, I'm at the top of the screen, so that's very difficult. Um, the other thing is, in sales, you have, in the last year and a half, I guess, it's been, there's been a big shift towards go-to-market engineers, GTM, the whole thing. And one of the biggest tools has been Clay and similar tools to Clay. And no disrespect to anyone that I might mention, but the fact of the matter is their application is not meant for someone who uses a screen reader, and I would imagine any other type of assistive accessible technology. So, but again, it goes back to supply and demand, right? So, you look at how many blind, visually impaired people that are in sales, outbound sales, go to market, etc., versus who are sighted. Well, of course, they're not gonna, it just simple economics. It's not gonna make sense for them to redesign a platform for one or maybe a few users.
So, for our users who might not be as familiar with sales and outbound sales culture, can you tell us a little bit
Yeah.
more about the program Clay and what that does?
Yeah, so I'll do my best because it's not
Hmm.
totally, I'm not totally in depth with it, but basically it's Clay is, from my understanding, the best way to kind of put it is it's like an Excel, Microsoft Excel, Google Sheet, something like that, but on steroids. So you can go in and they have, all these different tools built into the platform that you can, they'll charge you certain number of credits to access. So, for example, if you're running an outbound campaign and you want to find all the VP of sales in medical manufacturing in the US, you could go into Clay and create what they call a table, which is your Excel sheet or Google sheet. Put all this information in, and then you can access a waterfall of um, email providers, which basically means a lot of email providers to get the best email address. And then the same for phone number, same for, if maybe you want to find out what technology they're using, how many employees they have, what revenue they have, um, where they're located, all these various parameters you can then access. But it's each area you want to use is a grid or a table, which is when you're using a screen reader is very challenging to navigate.
Mhm.
I hope that gives a somewhat of a good description of the tool.
That sounded like a pretty good description to me. Um, I'm no expert in sales myself, so
Yeah,
is so are tables and spreadsheets in general not super compatible with screen readers then?
correct. Yeah, not
Mm.
not overly. They like you can definitely navigate them. It's just not the most time consuming aspect.
Right. That sounds like a definite gap in the market that people should work on getting tables and Excel spreadsheets that can be utilized by a screen reader more effectively because that's
That's
a
that's
really
right.
big
Yeah.
tool that could help a lot of people.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
So, what boundaries have you really found important to protect and hold to protect your health when you're staying effective at work?
Yeah, so the past few years, as you mentioned in the intro there and kind of my bio, is that 6, 7 years ago, I was diagnosed with severe kidney disease. And about I'd be, well, yeah, 3.5 of those years I was on home dialysis. I was, you know, all those years I was back and forth pretty regularly to various doctor's appointments, getting tested and screened and prepared for a kidney transplant, and then had the transplant, and then follow-ups, and I'm still followed by a team regularly, but it's not as frequent as it once was. And yeah, I would have to, um, until August, I was working with an outbound sales agency and working on a lot of client work. So basically, say you wanted to do a outbound sales for your company, but you didn't want to do it, you would come to us. We would set it all up and actually do it for you. So I was working on a lot of campaigns, clients, etc. And I would have to be very diligent and just time block. So like if I knew, okay, I've got a doctor's appointment tomorrow. It's going to take me half an hour to get to the appointment. Probably, doctors aren't on time. So, probably about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours for the appointment, another hour to get home. So I would just block all that out and I would just let everyone know that, this is what's going on. I'm not available. So it's
Mhm.
just being very diligent with what you need, and then just make sure that you're communicating if you're working with a team or with a client, just so that everyone's on the same page.
Right. So being very clear and upfront about your time restrictions and
Correct.
things you need.
Yep. Correct. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about culture and status quo within the sales field today. What parts of modern sales culture do you think are currently the most hostile to disabled and chronically ill workers today?
That's a very good question. I think just kind of, alluding to what I'd mentioned earlier is just sales in general is all about well, I think let me back up. I think there's been a transition over the last year, maybe year and a half, that has gone from a traditional sales environment where it's like high volume, high velocity, very results oriented, and like if you're not performing or producing, you can, go find somewhere else to work. So I think there's been a really big shift from like that culture to more, um, you know, it's more about what do you need as an employee to do your job effective and efficiently. How can we get you those, tools? How can we help you gain those skills? So it's become very more collaborative. And I think part of why that is because of COVID. Like during COVID, you had
Mm.
all these sales reps go from being in a sales pit or in office, um, to then going fully remotely. And for the most part, um, sales reps are still remote. Some are hybrid where like they've got to be in office 2 days a week or something like that nature. But I think the biggest thing is it's become very more collaborative opposed to just being like, okay, well, you're not hitting your numbers, so there's the door and see you see you later. And I think that was the case for anyone, not just someone with a disability.
Right. So COVID really is such an interesting double-edged sword for a lot of disabled people, and all the all very obvious harms it caused, but also a lot of really positive things have come out of COVID as
Yeah,
well, and increased accommodations in workplace and medical advances.
exactly. Yeah.
So you think just the very die-hard um, sales or get the fuck out kind of culture is one of the things that can be most impeding, not just for disabled people, but people in general in sales.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Don't get me wrong, there's still those type of leaders that are still there and
Hmm.
they're not gonna go away until, it's time for them to retire or they're, them themselves aren't going and they get booted out. But um, you know, up until August, when I was in the outbound sales agency world, a lot of the times I was dealing with millennials, Gen X, so they're more, they're more progressive, they're more aware. Whereas, you reach out to someone that's not so much, and then it's always a challenge, right? Because they're stuck in that mindset of, well, high volume, do this, do that. You're not doing it, then like you said, get the fuck out, there you go.
Hmm.
Um, but if you're reaching, like if you're working with a Gen X or a millennial founder who, in the software world who's just raised a bunch of money, they're more, well, first of all, they're a little more calmer as people. But they're also just, it's more of, well, okay, how what do you need to work better? How can I help you?
Hmm.
Type of a mindset.
Do you think that culture is kind of turning in a positive direction for
I think so.
disability and accommodation in sales?
Yeah, I think so.
Wonderful to hear.
Yeah,
Um,
it really is.
on that note, if sales teams were redesigned and kind of focused on accessibility in mind from the start, what would change? Or do you think that's kind of how things already are changing as it is?
To some extent, it is, but yeah, I think there needs to be more done because, like I said, when it comes to, and this is not necessarily just in sales, but in a whole, it's like, you know, when it comes to software specifically, it's like, how do we how do we as a company, or how do I as a founder design this piece of software that is going to be both accessible for people with disabilities, but
Hmm.
also efficient, effective for mainstream users. And I think to some extent you're beginning to see more of that because of and I can't remember the acronyms off the top of my head, but like here in Canada we have regulations. So like um if you're viewing a website, like if you're a large organization, for example, like a bank, your
Hmm.
website has to be accessible compliant. Um, so somebody, if they're using, whether it's screen reader or a different type of accessible technology, they can navigate, understand that website. And I know in the US that there are uh, regulations in place for that as well. And there are companies that are working with organizations to transition their platforms to be accessible compliant. But obviously that takes time
Hmm.
because the larger the organization, the more um, you know code and program you have to redesign. But that to me is a really positive step forward.
Right. And, we love to see and kind of focus on the positive steps that are happening right now, in a time where
Yeah,
there's a lot of negative stuff in the news to try to
yeah,
find
yeah,
that hope and that spark.
absolutely. And um, I was trying to get this company for a client a couple years ago, and I the name doesn't come to me right now, but they were the whole company's purpose, mission, etc. was and is like they're still in business as far as I know, but it is to um, make accessible, sorry, to make technology accessible for various types of accessible technology. So, it's really cool for me personally when I come across a company like that. It's like, yeah, this is near and dear to our heart because this is what we're actually trying to help people do and build.
Hmm. Well, what advice would you give to disabled professionals who are entering high pressure fields like sales and how they can succeed and feel confident?
Yeah, that's a awesome question. So advocate for yourself, understand what it is that will make you successful, and what you need, what you require, whether it's a piece of accessibility technology, whether it's a piece of accessible equipment if you're working in the office. Um, like for me, example for me, when I was working at that managed service provider years ago, it was in an office building. I forget. I think it was like four, maybe five stories, something like that. And so I needed to understand the layout of the building. Where was my office? Like what suite was it? How would I get to it? Uh, what obstacles are in the way? What's the best path for me to travel to get to the office, to the washroom, to the lunchroom, etc.
Mhm.
So, it's not just a technology standpoint, but it's a physical layout as well to for yourself. And then also um have an honest conversation with the leadership. This is what I need day in, day
Mhm.
out to be successful, and make that plan together.
Right. So kind of be upfront with that, start on the right foot with everything you need, to
Yep,
kind of get that ball rolling right away.
exactly. Um and then like don't be shy either. Like if you're, for example, part of a sales team, um you know, make the help make your sales team aware of, your current situation, what you are going through, what you need, how you
Mm-hmm.
operate day to day. Because, as a part of a team, they're gonna, well, in my case, anyways, a lot of people will reach out to me, and like my story to them is really inspiring. It's something that they can find that positivity in. And even when I was working in an office, like people would when I would start to get to know each other, everyone, it was just that environment of, how can I help you? And it just you start to get comfortable in your surroundings, and people begin to help you out no matter.
Right. Well, kind of on that note, what advice would you give managers and coworkers who are trying to to support disabled team members without being patronizing or offensive?
Yeah, for sure. So, I can only speak for myself in my situation. So, just, going back to like the office environment, asking, can I help guide you to the office, or can I help guide you to the lunchroom, whatever that might be. Or if if someone sees me walking towards maybe a barricade of some sort, just not shouting out, but like, hey, Martin, there's a pillar in your way. Just go to your left or to your right, something like
Mm.
that. That's, just it's a small thing, right? And quite honestly, you don't even, to me, it's like, oh, okay, thanks. Like to me, it's nothing. But
A heads up.
yeah, for that person though, it's like, well, that should I let him know that or not let him know? So it's something as small as that gesture is more than enough.
Hmm.
From a coworker, from a manager, um, I think just kind of, they need to they need to, I guess, get out of their company hat, their organization hat, and put on their human, their empathetic,
Mm.
compassionate, genuine hat, and just, you know, have an honest conversation to get to understand what will make this a safe, enjoyable environment for you. And just trying to understand what it is that'll make that environment safe.
Right. So, opening their heart and connecting human to human on what you guys can do to collaborate and how they can make sure that you can do your job effectively
Exactly.
and
Yep,
easily.
that's right.
All right. Well,
Because
let's.
you like in the office, you look at how many hours a day, week, month, year, whatever it is,
Mhm.
right? You look at how much time you spend in an office, if that's what you're doing, or even remotely, the amount of time you're spending working. That you want it to be a safe environment. You want it to be a fun and atmosphere, collaborative, all these things, right? And you can't do that if you're not willing to learn, understand, ask all these questions.
Right. Well, let's ask one more quick question before we wrap up our interview. If listeners take one thing away from our conversation today, what would you hope that thing is, Martin?
I would hope that as somebody that is disabled, and disability is a broad term spectrum,
Mm.
but I would hope that they are comfortable enough in their environment, in their situation, be able to advocate for what they need, what they require to ensure they have a safe working environment, have the tools they need in order to be successful in their work, in their job, so that they can reach whatever that success looks like to them.
Amazing. I love that. Well, Thank you so much, Martin, for coming on the show today and being interviewed. It was such a pleasure talking to you. And I'm sure our listeners got a lot of amazing insight and advice on disability, sales, and how to figure it out when you're disabled and trying to get into work and support yourself and live a life.
Yeah,
So I'll see everyone next week for How We Work Now. And thank you so much for watching.
appreciate it. Thank you.